It's official now. Formula One has a new world champion. In NHRA, a defending champion falls short in his bid to repeat. And ralliers in Michigan press on regardless. This and more next on Speedweek.
Speedweek is brought to you by Dodge Cars and Trucks. On the street or off the road, it's the new spirit of Dodge.
Hi everyone, I'm Bob Jenkins and welcome to Speedweek. It's a little hard to believe, but this is our first show for the month of November. Before you know it, Christmas is going to be here, then the New Year, then the 24 hours of Daytona. Well, we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves. First, we have to wrap up 1989, and we have a lot to tell you about in the next half hour. Several more champions were crowned this past week, and in just a few moments, Gary Lee will join me with details from that kart reorganization meeting in Chicago. But first, Formula One. The World Championship was decided by a three-member FIA committee in Paris earlier this week. At question was whether Ayrton Senna should be disqualified from the Japanese Grand Prix. He and teammate Alain Prost collided while the two were racing for the lead. Then after realizing the car wasn't damaged, Senna took a shortcut and returned to the track. Race officials said that violated FIA rules and he was disqualified. The FIA met to hear Senna's appeal at their headquarters in Paris. If the disqualification is upheld, Prost is world champion.
The final ruling confirms the sanction given by the Sports Commission of the Japanese Grand Prix by excluding car number 1 and its driver Ayrton Senna from the final results of the race. And, according to the dispositions of Article 189 of the International Sports Code, pronounces a fine in the amount of $100,000 and a sentence of a 6-month suspension, deferred for a period of 6 months to begin on this day.
McLaren responded quickly to that ruling, calling it grossly unfair and threatening to appeal that decision in the French civil courts. Now, why are they making such a big deal about it? Well, McLaren's Creighton Brown says it isn't because they're trying to show favoritism to Senna. It's simply because they want to win races and the Japanese victory was taken from them. Prost joins Jack Brabham, Jackie Stewart, Niki Lauda, and Nelson Piquet as the only three-time world champions. Now, the final race of the 1989 Formula One season is this Sunday in Adelaide, Australia. ESPN's coverage begins at 8:30 Eastern Time on Sunday morning. Contrary to Formula One, the World Sports Prototype driving title was decided last Sunday on the track and in a kinder fashion. Color the 1989 season black and silver. That's the color scheme of the Peter Sauber Mercedes team. They won Le Mans back in June in their first time out and have won every other race except one this year. The battle for the championship came down to the final race in Mexico City between teammates Jean-Louis Schlesser and Mauro Baldi. And unlike Formula One, this was a friendly rivalry. Schlesser and co-driver Jochen Mass started on the pole and led most of the event. An early challenge by the Toyota driven by Johnny Dumfries and John Watson failed when it broke a drive shaft after hitting another car. The number 5 Brunn Motorsports Porsche 962 with Oscar Larari and Harold Heisman wound up second, about 36 seconds behind. Schlesser won the race and the championship when the other Mercedes with Kenny Atchison crashed, ending Baldi's chances. Closer to home, championship auto racing teams met in Chicago last Monday to reorganize, and our Gary Lee was among those in attendance. Gary?
Well, Bob, the agenda for last Monday's meeting was really discussed earlier at that hastily called car owners meeting last month in Denver. All the major teams were represented, including those that missed the earlier meeting in Denver, such as A.J. Foyt and Steve Horn, Roger Penske and Vince Granatelli. As the closed-door session continued into the afternoon, kart president John Campanigro was summoned from his hotel room. When the meeting finally concluded, the old kart board had been disbanded, the chairmanship dissolved, and the president retained. The new structure will have the 24 kart franchise members serving as the board of directors, with 3 committees reporting to that board. Dick Simon will chair the media and marketing committee, with Roger Penske heading up the legal and finance, and Derek Walker overseeing the rules and technical committee. Although John Frasco will no longer serve as chairman, he does have a contract with CART, and his future role, if any, has not been decided. Although there had been much speculation that a commissioner would be named, it never happened, and John Campanigro retained the title of CART president.
Well, John was retained as the president because he is the president, and we do have a contractual agreement with John to act as our president. He was not up for termination today or for continuation today. His contract is up in February, and like any president of any corporation, he will be reviewed by the board of directors, and his contract will either be renewed or not renewed, depending upon the success of his duties as president.
Gary, I was a little surprised that more changes didn't come from that meeting.
Well, I know I was. The agenda had been set. We thought they would vote. It would be over by mid-afternoon. It went to about 5 or 6 o'clock, but Simon says he's sorry it didn't go even longer.
You know, we revealed the contents of this letter sent by the Indianapolis Motor Speedway last week, scolding CART for not communicating with the Speedway and USAC about the rules for the 1990 Indianapolis 500.
Well, of course, the Indy 500 is a USAC sanction, so I asked John Campanegro how he saw his relationship and the CART's association with the Indy 500.
In my opinion, who exactly is the person who waves the flags or texts the cars necessarily isn't the key issue. It's the ability to work together for the good of everyone, because after all, we strengthen the Indianapolis 500 as a show. And the stronger we are, the stronger the Indianapolis 500 is. And as long as we keep that in mind, I think there's ways that we can work together for the benefit of both.
I cannot agree that a stronger CART makes for a stronger Indy 500. Everything in IndyCar racing is predicated on the Indy 500, including sponsorships. Now, the race has been around since 1911, and if they had to, the Speedway could go without a sanction. But I do agree we have to have that communication between the factions of USAC CART and the Indianapolis Motor Speedway.
And it looks like this communication is beginning to happen, because I was at the Speedway last Tuesday and car owner Doug Shearson had a compromise about the 1990 rules that he was showing to USAC's Roger McCluskey.
Well, USAC now is scheduling a technical rules committee meeting, and they will invite representation from the new CART structure.
Gary, thank you very much for the report. Last week's Speedweek phone poll question asked who you thought should control IndyCar racing in the U.S. 34% of you said CART should. 23% voted for USAC. The Indianapolis Motor Speedway got 17% of the vote. 17% of you said all of the above, and 9% of you said none of the above.
Speedweek is brought to you by Quaker State Motor Oil. The big Q stands for quality, always has, always will. And by Dodge Cars and Trucks. On the street or off the road, it's the new spirit of Dodge.
Coming up, NASCAR crowns its youngest National Series champion ever, while open wheelers fly high at Ascot.
There's a rough road ahead with no end in sight. Quaker State engines don't know when to quit.
Quaker State is quality engineered to exceed every single American, European, and Japanese car maker's U.S. requirements for maximum engine protection.
So pistons are protected from friction mile after mile. Valves are protected from wear year in, year out.
That's why Quaker State engines run strong and run long.
Quaker State engines don't know when to quit.
The big Q stands for quality. Always has, always will.
Even when it's standing still, there's something about a fuel-injected, turbo-powered Dodge Daytona Shelby that'll blow you away.
Members of the National Council of Corvette Clubs. To them, there's no car but a vet and no tire but a Goodyear Eagle ZR. We invited them to a showdown, Dunlop D40 M2 against Eagle ZR. Slaloms on wet and dry roads. Hard cornering. Braking. Comfort and noise on the highway. Which tire would they buy now? All 10 pick the Dunlop D40 M2. Dunlop outperforms.
In the NASCAR circuit, Junior Johnson and the Budweiser racing team.
This Bud's for you.
After After a week off, the Winston Cup title chase continues this weekend in Phoenix, Arizona. Rusty Wallace will continue his pursuit of the championship, knowing his plans for next year are all set. This is what his 1990 car will look like. The new sponsor is Miller Genuine Draft, and it was unveiled Monday in Charlotte. Although Rusty filed suit in an attempt to get out of his contract with car owner Raymond Beadle earlier this year, the two will be together again next year. But after that, Raymond may not be in the picture.
We put a multi-year contract together with myself. We put a one-year contract together with Raymond. And I'm not saying that might not go on and on forever. But right now, it's just the situation they wanted to take. And so we did that, and I'm real excited about it.
So now Rusty can turn his full attention to winning the Winston Cup this year. He's expecting it to go down to the final race of the year in Atlanta. Last year, Rusty was critical of Bill Elliott for not racing, but just cruising to the championship. Wallace doesn't plan on changing his driving style.
Now, if I win this championship, I want those people to look up and turn four as they come off for the last lap at Atlanta, and me be dead sideways, tires on fire, and cross the start-finish line. And that's where I want to end it.
It's mathematically possible, but highly unlikely that Rusty can end it this weekend at the Checker Auto Works 500 at Phoenix International Raceway. We'll have live coverage beginning at 2:30 Eastern Time this Sunday. NASCAR's other major stock car division crowned its champion last Sunday. L.D. Ottinger snapped a 3-year winless streak, but Rob Moroso came out the big winner. John Kernan reports from the Winston Classic triple header in Martinsville.
Moroso started the race on the outside of row 1 and quickly moved out front, hoping for a win and a poor enough showing by Tommy Houston to win the Busch Grand National driving title. Tommy Ellis began the race in the 13th starting position, 44 points behind Houston. Ellis, who said he had no hopes of winning the title, didn't drive like it as he quickly pushed his way into the top 10. Jimmy Hensley, in his first ride in the number 55 Oldsmobile, dropped out just 19 laps in with engine problems. Hensley finished 32nd. On lap 25, the caution flew for debris on the track. Houston, who ran out of gas on the last lap last year, ducked into the pits to top off his fuel tank. 30 laps later, Ellis would make his move, getting a nose under Moroso. Tommy takes the lead in 3 and 4 and threatened to run away with it. Pole sitter Rick Mast saw his day come to an end after a tangle with Jeff Burton. Mast finished a disappointing 28th. Houston's luck looked good 122 laps in when he somehow managed to get by Morgan Shepherd in 77 untouched. Unfortunately for Houston, he had used up all his luck for the day. Ellis's luck also changed in the late stages, with the number 99 Buick dropping a valve, dropping Tommy off the pace and out of the championship hunt, finishing 10th. Then just 26 laps from the end, Houston's luck soured as his engine expired.
Most likely a valve spring. The valve springs, they've given us quite a few problems this year, and I just wish somebody that was making valve springs would make something that we could put on there that was dependable and not have to end the season in, you know, this kind of shape.
With Houston behind the wall, Moroso was home free as long as his luck held out. And it did, as he finished third behind L.D. Ottinger and Harry Gant to win the driving title by 55 points over Houston, 56 over Ellis.
It hasn't sunk in yet, obviously, or I'd be jumping on top of my car, which I might be doing here in a little while. It's just a great feeling. You know, we came here and we got the job done. We did exactly what we had to do. The car handled real good. You know, switch the sweet old, just cruise around here.
John Kernan reporting for Speedweek.
Well, John, another part of the Winston Classic involved NASCAR Modifieds, where there was also a tight three-way battle for the title. Heading into Sunday's race, Mike Stefanik owned a healthy 95-point lead over Reggie Ruggiero, with Tony Hirschman 129 behind. While those three engaged in their own personal war, pole sitter Jeff Fuller jumped into the lead and never looked back, leading all 200 laps. Meanwhile, Stefanik's point lead came tumbling down as engine problems sent him to the sidelines early and dropping him to a 29th place finish. Hirschman had better luck in number 1. He was just ahead of number 21 George Kent and 36 Mike Iwanitzko. Kent continued on, Iwanitzko didn't. Hirschman then set out in pursuit of Ruggiero, who used every inch of the half-mile track to hold off Tony for second. Stefanik now clings to a 1-point lead over Ruggiero, Hirschman just 40 back, heading into the season finale this weekend at Thompson Speedway in Connecticut. The late models were the third portion of the Winston Classic, and Curtis Markham held off Jimmy Hensley for that victory. The auto racing community suffered yet another loss this past week. Former NASCAR driver Darrell Derringer died after a long bout with cancer. Derringer won 7 Grand National races in his career. His most famous was in 1966. It came at the Southern 500 in Darlington. Derringer, a Yankee from Indianapolis, was driving Bud Moore's number 16 downsized Mercury Comet. When Richard Petty's Plymouth suffered a deflated tire, Derringer won his first superspeedway race. It was work with tires that Derringer also gained fame. As a test driver for Goodyear, he helped develop the inner liner. Asked to run over pieces of metal at high speed, it was dangerous work. But what was learned from those tests has saved the lives of many drivers down through the years.
They all said, boy, you're nuts. And I guess I really was, because, like I say, we lost Billy Wade in an accident after I got hurt. But I could see that we were so close to getting something perfected that would help racing and the safety of the drivers. And I think that's what kind of gave me the push to go on.
Derringer was honored for his contribution to racing and as a test driver by being named to the National Motorsports Press Association Hall of Fame in 1988. Darrell Derringer was 63.
Relive those great sprint car days of the 60s and 70s. High-quality, professionally produced sprint car thrills is just $59.95. The most exciting, action-packed racing you'll ever see. Call 1-800-992-VIDEO. Sprint car thrills or Sprint Car Classics Volume 1, just $59.95. Both available in beta or VHS. Call 1-800-992-VIDEO. Dick Wallen's Sprint Car Thrills or Sprint Car Classics, just $59.95 each. Visa and MasterCard welcome. Call 1-800-992-VIDEO now.
If you start subscribing to Playboy magazine, you could have one small problem. You can't throw them away. I mean, could you throw out Miss February just because her month was up? No way. Believe me, you'll become more than a Playboy subscriber. You'll become a collector.
Subscribe now and this Playmate video is yours free. A year of Playboy for only $26 and the Playmate video free. Call 1-800-544-1000.
NASCAR's Rusty Wallace and Dale Earnhardt are in a hard-charging battle for the Winston Cup Championship. It could all be decided at the Auto Works 500, Sunday afternoon at 2:30 Eastern, live on ESPN.
Much of the historic video seen here on ESPN Speedweek is courtesy of Dick Wallen's Racing Classics. The Winston Finals in Pomona not only marked the end of the 1980s for the NHRA, but also ended an era for two of its most famous and successful drivers. Last Thursday, a couple of four-time champs, Kenny Bernstein and Don Prudhomme, made their final side-by-side burnouts and run down the quarter mile in funny cars. Next year, both will be moving on to Top Fuel. This was only a qualifying run, so it really didn't make any difference who won, but it was probably the biggest moment of the weekend for both drivers as each lost in the first round. Who will Kenny and Don be challenging for the Top Fuel Championship next year? Well, this year it came down to a tight battle between Gary Ormsby and Joe Amato. Gio started out on a roll, winning 4 of the first 8 races, but then disaster struck, not once but twice, first at Sonoma and then at Brainerd. Miraculously, he escaped injury in both crashes. Going into Pomona, Ormsby's lead had shrunk to only 570 points. 200 points are available in each round. Round 2, Gary must win against number 1 qualifier Darrell Gwynn. Darrell gets the jump and appears to be the winner, but he red-lighted, and that clinches it. Ormsby wins his first ever Winston World Championship, and he does it the old-fashioned way. He earned it.
We were pretty conservative. We had a major blow-up yesterday on the final run of qualifying, and we had to put a completely different engine assembly in this car. And we were a little nervous the first round, but it turned out to be okay. We got down the track and was fortunate enough to win the first round. And then, of course, we pumped it up a little bit because Gwynn had been running a little bit faster than we have here. And it worked out well. He over-anticipated, and we got it automatically.
And Gary didn't stop there. The new champion made it to the finals, where he faced off against the old champ Amato. Joe won the Krager Classic the day before, but came up short today.
Gary did a good job. Their crew did an outstanding job this year. They deserve the World Championship. They won it. They had 2 bad accidents all through the year, and give them a lot of credit. You know, there'll be next year. Next year, we're going to have Kenny Bernstein and Don the Snake Prudhomme in here racing with us. And I can only see bigger and better things for NHRA drag racing and Top Fuel, funny car, pro stock. It's all getting bigger and better.
The other winners at Pomona were Bruce Larson and Bob Glidden, who earlier had clinched titles in Funny Car and Pro Stock, respectively. While the new winners were celebrating, a former champion was wondering just what lies ahead for next year. Shirley Muldowney's first-round loss to Jean Snow may have been her final appearance ever in drag racing. That's because her sponsorship for next year wasn't renewed. Recently, we asked some IMSA drivers what they'd be doing if they weren't racing.
Bagging groceries, I don't know. I probably would have joined the Air Force, I think. I wouldn't be doing anything else. That's not a reasonable question.
Watching cars on TV.
Blowing my own horn on the jazz floor.
Ooh, good question. I'd probably be fishing right now. I'd be a big game hunting guide.
Oh. Riding a bicycle.
I got no idea, and that fear keeps me racing.
Find it at the heart of every Dodge machine competing today. It's on the track and off the road. It's the new spirit of performance.
The new spirit of Dodge. The new spirit of Dodge.
The Murine Earwax Removal System has drops that safely loosen hardened wax when used as directed, plus an ear washer to gently flush wax away. Murine, the complete medically approved system to safely remove earwax.
The preparation is complete. Now it's time for game day. College Game Day previews all the gridiron excitement Saturday morning on ESPN.
A couple of sons of famous race drivers made headlines over the weekend. Robbie Unser, Bobby's youngest, won one of 2 American IndyCar Series races at Willow Springs, clinching the title. He's had an amazing year, winning 12 of 16 races in the AIS. And P.J. Jones, son of 1963 Indianapolis 500 winner Parnelli, escaped injury in a vicious flip in a CRA Sprinter at Ascot. P.J. was unable to compete in the Saturday night finals of the Pacific Coast Nationals. A huge crowd turned out to watch this year's event, run for the first time in 3 years without wings. Billy Boat, who swept last weekend's Western World, got the jump at the opening green and led the first 26 laps, but there were incidents along the way. Leland McSpadden and Keith Crisco battled for position, with Leland taking the inside line. The Ascot track was tacky, but not enough to prevent Leland from spinning out in turn 3 and nearly taking Keith with him. On the restart, watch what happens when Crisco, the 4th car, gets a little sideways. Mike Sweeney is not the only driver involved, but is the only one to get on his head. At the end, the battle for the lead came down to a heated duel between Brad Knopfsinger on the outside and Ron Schumann. Although Brad was having fuel pickup problems, he held off the hard-charging Schumann to take the $6,000 win. Schumann is the new points leader. The USAC Midgets were also on the card, with the Midwesterners joining the West Coast regulars. Cosworth-powered Sleepy Trip in red started from the pole and led nearly all the way until passed by Stan Fox, debuting in the new Beast Gertie. But Stan spun while leading and running by himself with just 2 laps to go. On the restart, Rich Vogler used his Aries power plant to get a round trip on the high side and steal another win. Fox also had trouble in preliminaries the night before. In one of the nastiest-looking incidents of the weekend, Stan and Gary Koster came together, with Koster going out of the ballpark. Neither driver was injured. Russ Gamester continues to lead the USAC National Midget Point Standings. Robbie Flock tops the Western States Division. The SCCA's Press On Regardless Pro Rally in Michigan's Upper Peninsula celebrated its 31st birthday last weekend, making it the oldest of all pro rallies. And this year, in addition to that event, there was an IROC type race. The Auto Week Toyota Rally Challenge matched the 8 fastest ralliers in North America. Each took a turn on a 3-mile gravel road, and the field was paired the fastest 2. It would be Rod Mellon against Doug Shepard to determine the winner. Now, it's going to be pretty easy for you to figure out which one of those 2 won. You're riding with Shepard and Auto Week's Larry Edsel. So, Doug, what happened?
It's like a dog leg left over a crown in the road, and I stayed to the right as you're supposed to, eased out of the throttle, cut across to the apex at the crest of the hill, and landed back on the right side of the road just like you're supposed to. But maybe a foot too far to the right, there was a rock in the ditch there. We banged the rock, it kicked the tail up, the car turned left, and the next thing I saw was trees.
Well, neither was injured, and so Millen won. Shepard was second, and that's exactly the way they finished in the rally the next day. Millen and his Mazda GTX won for the 6th consecutive time this year, finishing about 3 minutes ahead of Shepard's Dodge Daytona. Now, when a runner is first to break through the tape, he's a winner. That's not the way it is in pro rallying. It means you missed the main road. You got to put her in reverse and try again. Well, the SCCA has decided to eliminate the Corvette Challenge Series for 1990. It's been around the past couple of years. It will become part of the SCCA's Escort Endurance Series.
From dawn's early light till the sun is set, Quaker State engines don't know when to quit.
Quaker State exceeds every single car maker's U.S. requirements for maximum engine protection. That's why in Atlanta, Georgia, the engine in every fire truck, every police car, every Atlanta city-owned vehicle is a Quaker State engine.
The big Q stands for quality. Always has, always will.
Members of the National Council of Corvette Clubs. To them, there's no car but a vet and no tire but a Goodyear Eagle ZR. We invited them to a showdown. Dunlop D40 M2 against Eagle ZR. Slaloms on wet and dry roads. Hard cornering. Braking. Comfort and noise on the highway. Which tire would they buy now? All 10 pick the Dunlop D40 M2. Dunlop outperforms.
A Big Ten battle with Indiana's Anthony Thompson. A key Eastern clash featuring West Virginia's Major Harris. And an SEC showdown make up college football Saturday. Live on ESPN.
We've mentioned a couple of times in this show about sponsorships and the effect they have on racing. Rusty Wallace has got one for next year. Shirley Muldowney doesn't. Well, often when deals are made, drivers are required to do a little extra work, like make TV commercials. You've probably all seen the Xerox commercials on our NASCAR races with Rusty Wallace and Alan Kowicki, but you probably haven't seen these.
You know, Rusty's so extremely talkative that some people think I'm the quiet one. It's just that Xerox antifreeze coolant appeals to my calm, cool demeanor. It protects my car's engine.
That's the reason I'm dressed like this, to point out that my...
You know, Rusty's so talkative, he's so talkative.
Now, Alan was supposed to prove the other point, that Xerox provides unprescripted... Now, Alan was supposed to prove the other point. Wait a minute. Now, Alan was supposed to... Let's try it again.
It protects my car's engine down to 84 below. I forgot it. It's just that Xerox antifreeze coolant.
That's the reason I'm dressed like this, to point out that my car's... God. Now, that's the reason I'm dressed like this, to point out that my car's... Now, that's the reason I'm dressed like this, to point at that Now, Alan was supposed to prove the other point, that Xerox antifreeze provides extreme conditions, Now, Alan was supposed to prove the other point, that Xerox antifreeze provides... Do it again. Wait a minute. You know, Alan, when I think extremely hot, I think of Xerox antifreeze coolant. You know, Alan, when I think extremely... Oh, Mom talking?
Well, that's it for another edition of Speed Week. We'll see you next week at 7:30 Eastern Thursday night and Sunday at 2:30 Eastern for the Checker Auto Works 500 Winston Cup race from Phoenix. We leave you with a ride through the Michigan wilderness in the Press On Regardless Rally. So long, everyone.
Speed Speedweek has been brought to you by Quaker State Motor Oil. The big Q stands for quality, always has, always will.